Let's bring our legal guys back. Avery Friedman, a civil rights attorney and law professor in Cleveland, and Richard Herman, New York criminal defense attorney and law professor, joins us from Las Vegas. So, you know, when you look at a situation like this, the first thing you ask, if you've been to law school, is if there's a policy problem here. Do either of you see a policy problem, perhaps that there is some rule out there where the left hand isn't telling the right hand what's going on? Avery?
You know what, Joe? Well, you know about going to law school, but the truth is that I don't see a policy issue at all. The fact is that every married mother or father has a constitutional liberty interest in their child. That's what this case is. Judge Gerald McDade wrote a 48-page opinion saying that what the adoption agency did in refusing to turn over this child essentially was not essentially, he said it was indefensible. And the fact is that even though the child will suffer because that child is going back to the natural father, that there is no claim. The Jared Kristi Frei, you couldn't hire screenwriters with that name, basically are saying God's on their side. Well, God's on the side of the child here, and legally, that child, I think, is going back to the natural father.
Richard, what about this issue of abandonment?
Yeah, that's a nice argument to make here, Joe, except for one thing. The biological father was duped and defrauded by Mom of the Year, told him she lost the child at birth. The child then was placed with this adoption agency. During the course of the adoption proceedings, this biological father called the adoption agency and said, listen, I understand you have my daughter. I want her back. Give me the information about her. And the adoption agency said, no, we're not going to disclose anything to you. And you cannot underestimate the power of the Mormon Church in Utah, who feel that they determine the best interest of the child, and that should be with a husband and a wife raising that child. And that's the problem here, Joe. The judge, as Avery deemed this case utterly indefensible. It is these people who have the child right now ought to be incarcerated immediately. The child must be returned to the biological father.
Go ahead. And we all know the main thing controlling here is the best interest of the child. Do you think that a court ruling taking the kid back to the father is the best interest of the child?
No question about it. It's the biological father, Joe. That trumps anything. It's the biological parent has the right. And if these people do not turn the child over, they will be incarcerated for contempt of court. And they should be.
That's right.
We have a full screen statement here. The Salt Lake City Tribune says, Kristi Frei wrote after the ruling, we have only ever wanted to do right by Lee, and we have always felt we have been acting in her best interest to keep her with our family and raise her as our own. Our hearts have demanded it.
Of course.
There has never been any question to us that she's ours. What about that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know what that means. It's a loving mother and father who was given the child by the adoption agency wrongfully, and now the consequence is the best interest of the child is governed by the law, Joe. The law says a natural parent who didn't abandon a child has the right to that baby, and that's what is going to happen here, and frankly, that's what should happen here.
All right, so
these are mental cases. They got to turn the child over. Their statement is ridiculous.